Hi, this is Neil again to tell you more stories about clay and its healing qualities. My wife is a seamstress, and one night in sewing costumes for the local middle school, she was flipping pom-poms out of the way as they approached the sewing machine. And she misjudged the distance and flipped a pom-pom just in time to have her finger go underneath the needle of the sewing machine. I was in the other room. I heard her exclaim she needed some help. I went in there and she was sitting there at the sewing desk with her finger in her mouth so that she wouldn't bleed on this white fabric. I looked there on the sewing table and I could see the shattered pieces of the needle, so I knew what had happened. As she took her finger out of her mouth momentarily, I immediately saw blood begin to come out of her finger through this big jagged rip. And she said, "Give me some clay," and she put her finger back in her mouth. Well, I went to our kitchen cupboard where we have a bottle of clay already mixed up as a gel, and I took a big spoonful of the gel and I put it in the corner of a Ziploc sandwich bag. And then I went back into the sewing room and she went from her mouth right into the bag. And then we nestled her finger in the clay. We put a loose twisty tie above the knuckle to hold it in place, and then she went back to sewing because these are costumes that had to be done for the morning dress rehearsal. Well, I was in the kitchen 20-30 minutes later making a phone call, and she came in to get a drink of water. And as she's filling her glass there at the sink, I said, "Marcia, how's your finger?" And as nonchalantly as can be, she said, "It doesn't hurt." Now, I donate blood a couple of times a year, and that pricked finger that they make will sting for an hour. And her finger was ripped wide open. So when she said it doesn't hurt, I didn't believe her. I thought she was just kidding. And I said, "Marcia, do you mean it doesn't hurt, or do you mean it's not excruciating?" And she held up her finger and she said, "Neil, there's no sensation of pain coming from that finger. I feel nothing." Well, she went back to sewing, finished the costumes. We went to bed with the bag of clay on her hand. She slept through the night pain-free. Well, the next morning she didn't want to take these costumes over to the middle school with the clay on her hand, and so she took the bag off, put a daub of clay that a Band-Aid would cover. She wasn't out of the house 3 minutes until her finger was banging and throbbing. She says she stood over there during the dress rehearsal with her hand as high as she could, trying to reduce the pain in that finger. And as soon as they didn't need her anymore, she zoomed right home and buried her finger in the mud again. As soon as her finger was in the wet clay, no pain. She left it on there through the day, out of pain. Sometime the next day, she took it off and the finger was healed. So for any of you who are seamstresses or who have a similar type problem with getting fingers hurt, have the clay on hand, mixed up, ready to use.